Welcome, all you Contras, partisans, and haters of communism. I've got another podcast. This is going to be a follow-up of the Guerrilla's Guide to the Baofeng Radio. I really need to finish this thing off, and I've got a couple podcasts coming up, so I want to do this in my spare time. I also wanted to get out some messages about courses coming up, and I figured this would be a great time to just do a little, call it a filler podcast for lack of a better term. Soon we'll have Rabbit on. He's going to talk about water and his experiences, but let's start. I'm going to start off with Barrel and Hatchet because I really have done 2 podcasts on him and not published them because I don't feel like I've done them justice on the conversation at hand. And I may wait to do one of their courses again before I actually do a sit-down podcast and talk about them. That said, super good guys. If you have any questions, message me on X at glogistician. Ask me whatever you want. Super good guys. Currently, they're kind of around the Orlando area doing that training, but they do some up in the northern part of Florida. I know they've gone to Georgia and some other places, and they're worth your time. So definitely check them out. Let's start this off. 25 July, which is coming up, is Contender Pistol. That'll be in Mulberry, Florida. They have Contender Rifle on 8th of August, and then Contender Rifle 2 on 29th of August. I'm going to try to make it to one of those if I can get a good rifle built. Again, September 11th, they're going to have Contender Pistol 1, and then September 12th is Contender Pistol 2. If I can make Contender Pistol 2, I will be doing that one. Moving on to the great and educated Joe Dolio over at tactical-wisdom.com. So look at their training courses right now. Now, he's done an excellent job on his website, categorizing everything, and I think this is probably one of the better ways to do it, but there's a whole list of it starting off. We're going to go to July 13th and 15th is coming up. He's going to have Protective Service Concepts. It'll be a 3-day course, and just today, which is July 10th, through the 12th, they're doing combatives, so you're late on that one. July 20th to 22nd, Community Security Ops. These 2 previous ones are probably one of my most interesting ones that I really want to take. I do want to go out to, when Joe comes on over to the G Camp, I may have to skip Recce courses this year and just go to his classes. That's the reality of it. I can't get enough time off, and I want to take all the courses, and I can't, and currently have some of the money to do that. Anyways, continuing on, July 27th, Defensive Pistol. July 28th to 30th, he's got Fieldcraft class, another really good one from everybody that's talked about it. August 1st is going to be Basic Pistol Shooting. August 2nd, Personal Protection in the Home, which is really nice. Nice, interesting concept to work with. August 8th is going to be Land Navigation. August 9th, Getting Home. I would love to know more about that. I know angry Americans out there right now, and I'd really like to know what those guys have cooked up in that. Editor's Edit. Chris Weatherman, aka Angry American, is not out in Montana at the moment. He's down in Florida, relaxing with his beautiful wife, chilling out on the river. That said, I know he's been out there, and I know he's going out there, and they've done some podcasts together, so that's why I said that ignorantly, and while editing, saw the feed and realized I'm an idiot. I may have to just get Joe on and talk to him about all this stuff. August 21st, 23rd, Combatives again. August 29th is Basics of Pistols for women only. August 30th, Personal Protection in the Home. And August 16th to 18th is going to be Community Security Ops in North Carolina. That's the one I'm probably going to go to if I can this year. Coming on over to Brush Beater with NC Scout. We have Advanced Radio Telephone Operators Course, 21st to 23rd of September. Now, his things all over the place, so it's not going to be chronologically done. Sorry. Tactical Casualty Care course is going to be 14th to 16th of August in North Carolina. Oh, and I did this again because I'm redoing this. Advanced Radio Telephone Operations course in the 21st, 23rd is in Montana. Signals Intelligence course is 28th to 30th of August in North Carolina. They have a Signals Intelligence course 25th to 27th of September in Montana. Scout course is going to be the 9th to 11th of October in North Carolina. Recce course is going to be the 12th to the 14th of October in North Carolina. So I may be able to hit the recce course. We'll see. And then he's got, let's see here, we've got another RTO course coming up 7th and 9th of August of this year. And it's going to have an RTO trainers operators course, the 3-day course out in Montana, 13th or 18th to the 20th of September. Continuing on, we have HF NVIS operations course will be 11th to the 13th of September in North Carolina. I'm going to try to be there again. I hope to be there again. It's worth its time. I don't know. I can't make all these courses. I want to. He's got Fighting Carbine 1st to the 2nd of August, 2026, North Carolina. And then another one that I really want to go to is the Drone ISR, Intelligence Surveillance Reconnaissance, 13th to 15th November, 2026. And that'll be it for now. Going on to Rally Point Solutions. Now, I've had problems with his website. He's got course catalogs and some other stuff, and he is easy to access. He's also floating around online, and that would be Wes Hightower with Rally Point Solutions. Now, I'm going to say this right away. If you've already had his courses, you already know how good he is. Please review his courses. He has info on Google, and I think he also had one other place that he wanted to have things published. I'm going to bring that up again. Any of these guys, if they have a Google review, go review them. These guys work hard. The algorithms and everything lock you down unless you get a lot of good reviews. And review them, honestly. I'm not saying don't poo-poo things, don't make comments. And like, I understand money's tight for a lot of people. A lot of people I know have gone to the courses, and I hang around people who go to courses. There's a bunch of you that probably don't see much less a book, but even a course is even less than that. A lot of people like to go on YouTube and watch videos, and they think they got their ideas. And I'd say that's even less capability than reading a book on the subject, because at least books are designed to be kind of wordy and go in depth, and people don't write something up that's going to take a 15-minute video to explain in all detail. So there's that. Anyways, back to Rally Point Solutions. First thing on his list is physical surveillance, identification, and countermeasures in Fayetteville, North Carolina, 21st, 23rd August. Very good course. A couple of my friends have taken it. I saw some of the photos of Wes walking around with some interesting accoutrement you might see at the G Camp if you go up there. Sitting on the wall, look for something dinosaur shaped. There is a photo there with him walking around with it as well. So it's interesting nod. Surveillance awareness is Fayetteville, North Carolina. That'll be 21st and 23rd of August. And that's concurrent with the physical surveillance course. And then they have something called the Sovereign Health Summit, 27th to 31st of October. That'll be in Harmony, North Carolina. Mountain Rayness Fallout will be the 2 to 4 November in Harmony, North Carolina. And they also have a Mountain Rayness of 12th to the 14th of March 2027. The reason I bring this up is it's going to be in Grapeland, Texas, and I do not believe they've done one out there. I'm very interested in the Sovereign Health. We'll see how that goes, and I'm going to be pushing that on to a couple other people that really probably would fit that situation. So let's go to the good old Guerrilla's Guide to the Baofeng Radio, and I'm going to start at page 67. We should be done with all the cool cache reports, Boris reports, and stuff like that. I didn't go into deep detail because reading those are boring as hell. This is the meat and potatoes of the radio. He explains this in this chapter. I'm going to try this time not to interject as much as I did and read this more clearly for you guys. That said, I think the bigger thing that is occurring is people don't realize that radio antennas are probably almost more important than their handheld radios. It's even more important in the HF department, which it becomes not only life or death. You're already at a risk with line of sight to being nabbed, but generally when you're running a line of sight, there is a lot of things going on that allow it or disallow it, and the threats that are imposed by it. HF is even more complicated because HF is a very niche area to communicate in and get transmissions. You can receive all day, but if you don't do it right with the right antenna, It'll get you killed probably faster than a whole bunch of walkie-talkies because everybody and their dog has a walkie-talkie right now. But the nice thing I like is Scout spends time in these books explaining this stuff out in a basic format. And I would say they does probably a far better job than what the military has done in the past in some of their manuals. And I'm highly think some of their manuals are probably worth reading along with this book. All right, so let's start. Page 67. This will be chapter 5, Crash Course in Field Antennas. The antenna, the most important part. When most are first getting into radio, they usually ask what make/model to buy, normally asking out of ignorance. The radio itself is mostly irrelevant, aside from its individual capabilities, i.e. the frequency range it covers, build quality, etc. But that aside, the most important part of the radio is the antenna itself. Ironically, this is also the least understood, with antenna theory falling into one of the two categories for those seeking to learn, either too complicated and thus dismissed, or broken down into a series of engineering formulas and added complication looking for an ideal. This chapter takes neither position. The reality is that for a radio operator, even an individual rifleman, as part of a larger guerrilla force, he must understand the performance of his antenna in the same way he does his rifle or any other piece of equipment. His life depends on it. This chapter explores the antenna first from the individual perspective, the antenna attached to the radio, and then from a higher level of capability with both omnidirectional and directionally transmitting antennas for small unit requirements. It is not written from an engineering perspective, and technical data is kept to a minimum so that anyone can grasp the basics of concepts in an improvised environment. I'm going to pause right there. I know some guys are going out on a ruck soon, hopefully this weekend or coming up, and I made the suggestion they bring their handhelds, and because some guys are going to be able to ruck 10, 12 miles, some people 5, and some people who are just into it, maybe not so far, but they need some trigger time and they need to be part of a community. I highly recommend when you do this stuff, because I've been smoked, absolutely smoked, hiking with small communities and people I've gone out and met before. I've also smoked some people too, mostly in the past of my existence, but that may get fixed if I move. That said, to have that community standard, to have that integration, and you've got guys moving, pull your radios out. Pull your jungle antennas. I just did a whole thing with Laser Ham on the jungle antenna. He's got a great one you just pack out and throw in a small pouch and go. I've got a 6100 in a Tactical Tailor pouch I found for $15, and it works fine. Got the antenna and everything else with it. That said, your handheld's going to be even smaller, more compact. If you want to, pre-build your antennas, go out there, have people work. So the slow guys can go out, park in the woods, set up a observation point. Maybe it's an out and back trail, maybe it's a circular trail, but you can have reconnaissance, intelligence of a generic standard, not bother anyone. Get those reps with the radios while getting the fitness you probably need, because I sure as hell do. All right, page 68. Individual fighting load radio considerations. The Baofeng radio lends itself well to a wide variety of roles that satisfies the requirements for sustainment, tactical, and clandestine use when certain considerations are made. In its stock configuration, the radio has limited utility, and much of that has to do with the generally poor antenna that comes from the factory. Most buy aftermarket antennas along with the radio. The Baofeng uses a SMA female adapter, which is a small, generally fragile, and like all thread connections, has a limited lifespan. It is also structurally weak when used with larger aftermarket antennas, which leads to them breaking under hard use. This absolutely must be a consideration for taking these radios into the field, and the same is true for any other radio utilizing SMA connections. I convert all of these to BNC, which is far more robust for field use. BNC connectors have the added benefit of being twist on, twist off, making quick connections clear and simple in the field. This makes attaching the antennas we will cover in this chapter far easier. Our personal choice is an inter-team tactical level antenna is anything that is highly flexible and gives good performance both in transmission and reception. Running a radio on your personal fighting load necessitates placing it on your non-primary side to avoid striking the antenna with your rifle. I weave the antenna in the webbing of the shoulder straps. I do not advocate using an antenna relocation kit as is popular with some. These are fragile and create an unpredictable radiating pattern due to the interference of the body's electrical field and the interruption between the antenna elements discussed later in this chapter. For troubleshooting reasons, a rifleman is much better off with a conventional antenna setup. Aftermarket antennas for a handheld radio are only going to get a team so far. However, for a large number of reasons. To be used in any role other than tactical, and specifically the inter-team level, building your own field expedient antennas becomes a requirement. The remainder of this chapter is dedicated to instructing the underlying theory on exactly how to do that in simple terms, granting the reader the tools to build any of the common antennas required for maximizing the capability of the Baofeng and any other radio in an austere environment. Understanding radio theory. One of the most common questions regarding radio in general is how much range does it have? This is a problematic question because when pertaining to the Baofeng and any other handheld or even mobile VHF-UHF radio, to give a proper answer, it requires explanation of basic radio theory. The answer in layman's terms is universally that it depends on a variety of factors: the operating environment, obstacles between you and the intended receiver, the efficiency of your antenna. It is critical to understand that first, your handheld radio operates in the VHF and UHF ranges, which is best understood as a line of sight. What this means is that, in theory at least, if one radio can see another on the radio horizon, it can communicate with it regardless of any other factor. One of the general rules concerning handheld radios is that the antennas themselves are usually a compromise, just efficient enough to keep the radio from burning itself up during transmission and giving just enough signal quality to get a couple of miles, if that. Commonly, the stock antenna out for the aftermarket models that give a little bit of improvement in some cases. We will address this in inter-team tactical level, but with that said, the best antennas are purpose-built for the task, and this chapter lays out basic instructions on how to do so with improvised equipment in any environment. This will enable the Baofeng or any other radio equipment to have far more capabilities than most believe possible, while aiding in the communications security (ComSec) requirements of tactical and clandestine roles. In order to understand improvised antenna construction, we need to take into account the basics of physics in layman terms. Radio waves travel at the speed of light. With that said, it is best to visualize radio waves and radio propagation as a form of light. Do this. Imagine yourself in a dark room. There's a light bulb that suddenly comes on. That light bulb is your radio and antenna when it is transmitting, and everything that illuminates is where your radio waves are propagating or can be heard. If you can visualize this picture, then you already have a basic understanding of radio theory. Let's stop right there. This also goes into SIGINT. I believe he goes into it in his book as well and makes this point. There's a little more to it than that, and he will go into it as well. Some things obviously penetrate, as we know. I think in chapter 1 we discussed that, and he brings it up in these sections as well. But regardless of what you're doing, for most of the line of sight stuff, think of everything as you are a lighthouse. And I promise you, if things get critical, people are looking for your light. They may not be able to see your light, but if any of you run night vision, you understand what IR light is, and your naked eye does not see it, but the night vision device will pick it up. You can find cameras that way. You can do a whole bunch of interesting, innovative stuff just with that kind of technology. That said, we're going to continue on. We're going to continue on page 70, environmental impacts on radio propagation. The operating environment makes a huge difference in physical distance that a radio wave will travel. Regardless of one's purpose for establishing communications, be it sustainment, tactical, or clandestine, the operating environment must be taken into account to recognize the potential limitations of and assets present. As we covered briefly in Chapter 1, the general rule is that VHF signals 30 to 300 MHz perform better in rural, hilly environments, and the UHF 300 to 3000 MHz performs better in urban sprawl. This is due to VHF ground wave signals physically bending with the terrain. Keeping with our light bulb example above, small terrain features such as hills cast a smaller shadow in that illuminated room. They also refract a signal off those same terrain features in the same way light does in a mirror, scattering your signal. Conversely, UHF signals are blocked by even minor terrain features but penetrate buildings. These basic facts must be taken into account when writing a tactical SOI. Again, this is paused on halfway down on page 71. If you guys are listening out at the Arkansas group, you should be looking at this. I highly recommend that you guys look at your signals, and I would stick in the VHF signals for communication connection, especially up in that region. I already brought up jungle antennas with them, which is later on in this book. I've told everybody to get these books. We've talked about them before, but I'm just going to harp on it a little bit because I know you guys actually listen to this once in a while, and yeah. So get out there and rock. And for those who are not part of their community, there's other communities out there. The Missouri guys are freaking phenomenal. I wish the one group would talk to the other group, and it's hard to get communities to kind of bond, but I think they're doing a good job out there. Both sides are well training in different ways. I think the Missouri guys have gotten far more training by inviting instructors out. And I know the Arkansas guys are a little more on the construction labor side, so sometimes they can't make the class and don't have the money for it and families. So we still try to push that stuff along. Continuing on page 71 on the second chapter. With regard to ComSec, a team may want to use UHF for inter-team communications and VHF to send messages back to the inter-team signal does not need to travel far, maybe only a few hundred meters at most. This mitigates potential interception. Communications with the TOC or communications with the Guerrilla commander usually covers a significantly longer distance, and VHF in conjunction with a purpose-built antenna makes sense when operating in a rural environment. If operating in an urban environment, the reverse would be true. There are several other environmental impacts on radio waves aside from the general rules laid out above in Chapter 1. 1. The higher the frequency, the more vegetation degrades signals. In a jungle environment, expect a radio signal coverage range in terms of physical distance, depending on frequency, to be shortened by at least half or possibly more. When conducting the RTO course in the spring in woodland environments, VHF universally performs better. The U.S. Army study of the PRC-64 during Vietnam contained a table calculating loss at various frequencies in jungle environment. HF performed the best, but is mostly impractical due to the large antenna size. VHF was the best compromise for tactical operations. UHF performed the worst in terms of physical coverage distance, but presents an advantage for communication security. 2. Desert environments reflect signals over a much longer range than usually expected. Due to a lack of vegetation and a higher degree of soil reflectivity, radio signals cover a longer physical distance than in woodland or jungle environments. Performance in Arctic environments, mostly snow and ice-covered, perform similar. 3. Bodies of water provide a perfect reflective surface. For a maximum amount of coverage, the ability to transmit over a body of water provides the perfect reflector for a radiated signal. 4. The better reflective properties of the soil, the higher the quality of your transmission. In simple terms, soil that has higher mineral deposits of silicates, granite, etc. perform much better in terms of radio wave propagation. If there is a poor soil at the transmission site, adding water underneath the antennas will improve it. Frequently, communication specialists would urinate under the antennas to improve their reflectivity. We are paused on page 72, and we will kick back on page 73 in a second. I want to read from FM 24-18 Field Radio Techniques, and this is the July 1965 version. We are on page 51, and we are going to read their little paragraph on soil, because there's types of ground in here and there's more to it, but I'm going to section C. An antenna must be erected over soil having a very low conductivity. It is advisable to treat the soil directly to reduce its resistance. The soil may be mixed with a quality of coal dust for this purpose. It can also be treated with substances that are highly conductive when in solution. Some of the substances listed in order of preference are sodium chloride, common salt for you numbskulls, but that's already written in there for you, calcium chloride, copper sulfate, which is blue vitriol. I've never messed with that and have no idea what it is, so I'm an idiot there. Magnesium sulfate, which is Epsom salts, and potassium nitrate, which you all know what the hell that is, saltpeter. The amount required depends on the type of soil and its moisture content. Warning, when the substances are used, it is important that they do not get into nearby drinking supplies. So yeah, don't piss in your fresh water. I wanted to bring that up. It is extremely important in the HF class to know about your soil content. And there are amazing online resources that are available to you now that you may not have later if things go sideways that will tell you about your soil. And that's taught in the class. Continuing page 73, obstacles between you and the recipient. Second factor affecting the range of a radio are physical obstacles between you and the intended receiver. The Baofeng and any other radio operating in the VHF and UHF bands are known as line of sight, LOS, of communication. If one radio can see the other in terms of radiating energy, known as RF, they can communicate. Obstacles between you and the intended receiver can prevent this. Large hills, ridge lines, and urban sprawl all present the most challenging obstacles in a given environment. The way this is resolved is by increasing one's physical line of sight. This is the reason that in mountainous terrain, you'll see antennas along the highest ridge line, and why antennas are usually found on top of tall buildings in urban areas. The more line of sight, meaning the higher in physical elevation you go, the more physical distance a radio wave can actually cover. This is also known as ground wave. The higher both you and the intended receiver are over the physical horizon line, the longer both of your lines of sight will be, respectively, and thus the more physical distance you will cover with your radios regardless of power output. Obstacles in our environment also scatter our signals through refraction. Hills and buildings both reflect a signal much the same way light reflects in a mirror. This plays a big role in clandestine communication techniques with directional antennas covered in Chapter 6. I'm going to stop there for right this second, and I want to go over a few things. First of all, ground wave can be your friend if you're communicating, and also can be a detriment if you're trying to hide. You can be tracked even with reflections, but reflections make it a lot harder. And a little anecdote, pine needles back in the day used to mess with pagers. Editor's note on the pine needles. As you can hear the thunder and lightning, and I shouldn't be doing this right now, but the pine needles have a certain length, and that length is correspondent to an antenna's length for the frequency of the pagers. This is something we will be going into later in the book, and I've talked about numerous times, but because pine needles are generally just sap and water filled leaves, and they're at about the right length, it actually absorbs a lot more signal strength than you would think, making it very hard to transmit into and out of pine needles specifically. There's some leaves at a certain distance that'll do the same thing too. But it was just a anecdote that I want you guys to think about, because there may be a whole bunch of stuff like fencing and things like that that can make a very good perimeter for radio waves not to come in depending on where you set up your antennas. I know some of you probably have no idea what a pager is, and quick rundown is a one-way receive-only text messaging / audio messaging device that came around well before we had cell phones. Similar concept, different frequency ranges, and they were generally one way. I understand that some of the hospitals still run a pager system to get a hold of doctors for specific reasons. I'm going to stop there for now because we are going to be getting into page 74 next time, and that's going to be antenna efficiency. And that comes with a little bit of math and a little bit of talking. And I may even try to get my buddy historian on for this one, just because he builds antennas in his class. He's got a deeper depth of knowledge. And I think if you read the Guerrilla's guide, you'll have enough information to put up any antenna for a handheld and get rocking pretty well. But there's some nuance to it that you can make a antenna a little bit better. So again, another reason why I really liked Laser Ham's setup, because that antenna is purpose built. The guy is paying attention. He's paying attention to the outer plastic on the antenna to help get every minuscule, we'll call it ounce of power, out of your handhelds and out in the field. This does not mean you can't build your own. He is well aware of this as well. Yours will perform a little bit less, but it'll perform a lot better than your standard rubber ducky. And I think that's very important for you guys to realize you can buy better products. Downside is so many other people out there, and he's economical for what he does. He's building you an antenna, which takes time and effort, and it's not something that you can do in 5 minutes, throw it up, and have really good quality. Plus all the material and stuff that goes into it. This isn't a promotion for him. Scout sells short, stubby antennas that are compromised to keep your signal down. So if you are being tracked, it's hard to find you. He's got better antennas. I would also recommend signal sticks. Every handheld I have right now that I purposely use has an adapter for BNC, and almost all those antennas are going to be a signal stick antenna out the box as my go-to. In fact, I probably have more handhelds and less antennas beyond the rubber duckies just because I haven't bought enough signal sticks yet. That said, those things are really flexy. They're really thin. They go right up into your gear and they work. The short stubby antennas are absolutely valuable. We had a conversation with Rabbit, which I probably won't bring up in the next podcast, but he was talking about dealing with antennas getting in the way and how some of the fold-out pouches work. I know Joe sells a pouch for radios, and I believe that's a fold-out one. Technical Taylor had one that's on Surplus Market that I bought. Scouts sold one before. It folds out so you can do all your stuff and then close it back up and keep it in line with your body. Antenna differentials and what the antenna is extremely important, and I love the way his book does this. All this knowledge has been around for a long time, but probably not put in this position, and you're going to watch so many people regurgitate his book, including me, but at least I asked him permission. The fact of the knowledge is put in such a good manner and so understandable. If you spend time with this, I don't care if you don't know radios. I don't care if you have a ham radio license. I don't care if you run these all the time. If you read this freaking book and you pay attention to his freaking points, you will be way better off than probably most of the people who are carrying a radio around for civil service and hell, probably half the military. Frankly, if you're not in that field, you probably don't know what the hell you're doing besides clicky the button, talky to the people. And it's a sad thing. And I haven't seen any of the new field radio techniques manuals in a long time, but the ones in the 90s and early 2000s were hogwash, officer nerd crap that somebody wrote up in an engineering standpoint, and I think it's the dumbest thing we've ever produced. I think the fallback to Scout's book and stuff like the Field Radio Techniques manual from 1965, that era, you're not going to get as much as Scout's going to have in the book because his is updated for modern knowledge and stuff like that, and probably far better in aspects than the old books. But the old books has the same thing he's doing in plain text if you just want to go down a radio rabbit hole. I'm going to cut this now. I'm going to try to get hopefully another podcast out soon after this one, and we're going to be talking about water, a little update on water, and a little, let's say, micro disaster in modern US living that he experienced. And maybe if I can pull it off, I'm going to try to get a hold of some of the guys over at, because I love their product, and interview them as well. Anyways, guys, regardless, keep your shovel sharp and please don't be a loot drop. I hope to God problems aren't coming down the road, but if anybody's been paying attention for the last year, it's not looking good. You guys have a good night.